All right, no sponsor, no extras, just a good old-fashioned game review. In the background, I have a couple larger investigations going on and big video projects, also the next version of the ARG we're making, but for today, I just want to go back to the good old days before everything was so complicated and strings attached, where I got to play games, video games, all the time, talk about them, and just enjoy myself. The game is WarTales, and sadly I don't have most of the footage from my second run anymore. I guess I somehow made the files unreadable or got them corrupted or something, but I don't really care and nothing can faze me because that just meant I had an excuse to play it even more and gather some B-roll for the background. WarTales, from top to bottom, is incredible, and I do mean that word when I say it. Today I'd like to discuss precisely why, with a heartfelt recommendation for anyone who likes turn-based combat, enormous open worlds, flexible scenarios, not crazy flexible mind you, sometimes the choices are a little bit like a magician's force, but all in all, it's an incredible game. Let's get started. WarTales, if I had to describe it in a succinct way as much as possible, is an open-world fellowship simulation. Basically, you gather mercenaries together into a party, complete quests, explore various different regions, and manage their day-to-day lives. That may sound pretty cool initially, but let me assure you, it gets a hell of a lot better after that. It's been a long time since I actually reviewed a game, by the way, so I'm definitely rusty, keep that in mind, but I'll try to break things down as well as I can in terms of general atmosphere. I had some frame drops, I had some gripes with individual moments in various different quest lines, and I certainly don't think the game is perfect, not by any stretch, but it's hard for me to put into words just how engaging and enthralling it's been, still is for that matter, and just how much I respect what they have managed to build here. They, in this case, is Shiro Games. Funnily enough, I actually heavily played another one of their titles as well, called Northgard, which is a simplistic yet enjoyable RTS game themed around various different medieval clans. I almost did an indie spotlight for that one too, but never pulled the trigger, and this time, with WarTales, the impulse to talk about the game is quite frankly irresistible. WarTales is a top-down, open-world, isometric sandbox of turn-based combat and group management. What starts as a simple fellowship of a few different mercenaries will rapidly become a large caravan of highly personalized, customized, and emotionally impactful characters with incredible depth, utility, and meaning. Like I said, most of my footage actually got bricked, but the journey here from a ragtag group of low-powered thieves and recruits who can barely do a thing to a heavy-hitting commando strike force of perfectly refined and battle-hardened veterans is some of the most satisfying progression I have ever seen in video games. From rough beginnings, where every single payment of wages can feel daunting and every single meal is a struggle, to a band of nearly invincible specialists, the game has a remarkable ability to drip-feed content and progression in a way that feels almost genius. Example, as I went through the game on my first playthrough, it wasn't until many hours in that I realized I could capture and recruit enemies that I fought, picking and choosing how and when to do so. That's obviously not the only way, since it's all about recruiting and building up your mercenary band. You can recruit elsewhere through specialized quests, or hiring mercenaries in taverns, or knocking out and domesticating wolves and bears, and even capturing the twisted creatures and mole rats you find in dungeons. But the gist of it is that when you play this game, the feeling of discovery, that feeling of learning something new that has incredible possibilities and makes you excited to fight just one more battle or sit down for just 30 more minutes and try something new, is damn near omnipresent. Half of the enjoyment here is just learning mechanics. I'm not going to sit here and explain all of them to you like I normally would in a typical review because that would rob you of the incredible value that this game actually provides. Instead, I'll try to describe the atmosphere with a few examples from my first playthrough to hopefully show people just how deep this game really is. I started out with a rather standard group of mercenaries and chose region-locked exploration. That matters because it basically means that I could be either stronger or weaker than the regions I was in, meaning if I went somewhere too early, I'd almost certainly die, and if I stayed somewhere too long, I'd feel like a demigod. That was the correct choice for me, certainly, but it's also worth noting that dynamic difficulty scaling can present a much more consistent challenge for those interested. After starting out initially, the game was quite hard. It was difficult at times to manage my resources, but over time I began to realize more about how to run a successful troop of warriors. First, I started assigning professions. One person cuts wood, one forges weapons, one's a scholar, one does the cooking, etc., etc. Very quickly, I realized that you actually need to be thoughtful with professions, choose the right one, choose the right build, and it quickly dawned on me that the profession of the warrior is just as important as the skills they choose, and the weapons that they wield. From there, I discovered that I could recruit wolves and bears. I won't spoil how to do that, I'll just say that once I found that part out, I started to fall in love with the game even more. Then I learned that the individual perks and relationships of each character affect each other. Appointing leaders, lieutenants, and officers would give them unique bonuses, creating a sort of optimal rotation in combat of sorts with the abilities for every single battle and how you run them. And then from there, I realized that I could shape the relationships of the party to be positive and supportive or negative and hateful, thereby awarding various different bonuses. After that, I learned about food. I learned how to chain professions together and increase my resource yield, and I learned that every single time you camp, the game transforms from an XCOM-style enormous open-world combat simulator — that's word soup, I know, but it's kind of descriptive — to an intricate party management system that somehow threads the needle between complexity, or tedium in some cases, and ease of use in a way that I now truly and substantially respect. They threaded the needle here, and it's really incredible to see. But all of that was just the beginning. I began to realize that choices matter. You can pick sides in a conflict. You can progress or end storylines and subplots in unique ways, which is what led me to my second playthrough, and you can focus on different areas of gameplay by gravitating towards trade, crime, conflict, or general success. It's kind of hard to impress upon someone who has not played the game just how well the gameplay systems mesh together, but I'll try my very best. After realizing the role that professions play, I learned about upgrading the camp. I learned that you can passively produce resources in a sort of daisy chain that adds tremendous strength to your party, and that I could start radically increasing my power just by being thoughtful. I realized that the combat skill ceiling was not low, as I had misidentified previously, but incredibly, incredibly high, with an enormous number of additional skills, specializations, and interactions that could be used to either win massive battles or lose them as a result of poor planning. More importantly than anything else, in my opinion, I began to develop an attachment to characters, something that many games try to make happen but ultimately fail to achieve, and I even started naming them, something I pretty much never do in a game like this, but after enough emotional investment, there I was doing it and caring about them. I started looking at who they got along with, rearranging my camp to maximize valor point yield, and specializing my troop to synergize as much as humanly possible. From there, believe it or not, the game really opened up, and I keep saying this, but there's always more. I found more and more regions, bosses, dungeons, and secrets. Normally, I kind of rush through games. That's just my MO. That's how I play. But WarTales became so interesting to me, I actually slowed down. That's a big deal. I was scouring every single nook and cranny of a dungeon to find the codexes or click everything that I could click, the runes and the items, everything. I was solving every single unique puzzle and exploring every cliff or cave in the open world. I was finding things at a consistent pace that made me sit up straighter in my chair with excitement, and in a world where video games are meant to bring us enjoyment — that's kind of the primary purpose — that level of satisfaction that I got and still get and continue to uncover in WarTales is something that honestly demands a glowing indie spotlight review. At the end of every camp session, I found myself hoping for one of those unique moments where a successful warrior can brag about his accomplishments to the troop. I was carefully weighing the effects of spending influence versus gold and revisiting locations on the map to farm resources multiple times. I had 2 bears in my party for one of the runs, as you can see on screen, some of the footage that was never corrupted, which required a massive amount of food to sustain. It's actually hard for me to even remember all the different moments where I thought to myself, you need to put that in the review, because I didn't even take notes. Come to think of it, I probably should have, but the thing that I keep coming back to is that this game manages to make you invested in nearly every single aspect of its own gameplay. See a merchant? Yeah, you should probably check that. You might be able to buy something you do really want, even if it's just cloth or iron, because the resource management has an ability to make nearly everything valuable in some way or another. There's not really dead content here, which further builds out an atmosphere of this world being a persistent and living thing, where you are just a participant among many floating by. Later on, I started to really get the hang of things. I found more and more regions, unlocked fast traveling, started to have storage boxes, turned one city into my hub for smithing, one city into the hub for cooking, and started setting up reserve companions in various locations just in case someone died or I ever wanted to tweak my party composition. So far, I've only lost a couple of companions, but let me tell you, I actually went and found a special place to bury them. The little funeral cinematic or screen that plays is minimal, it is, but it almost perfectly summarizes the atmosphere of the world. You're mercenaries. There's no time for sentimentality in that particular moment, but the months of time that these companions spend together and the hours upon hours of time you spend building them up, it does mean something. I learned about arenas, unique bosses, secret skill trees, and eventually I became overpowered. I go crit every game, every time. It's just my playstyle for the most part. And eventually, yeah, I was hitting targets for hundreds of damage every attack and just destroying everything. But the journey to get there, the flexibility to play a different way, the cooperative dynamics between characters and archetypes, plus a whole lot more factors on top of that, like unique weapons with unique skills or one-time bonuses through inter-party dynamics, resulted in a feeling of unlimited possibility, even after I had trivialized the game difficulty with massive damage. WarTales is a story of success. It's a depressing story, mind you, don't get me wrong. Oftentimes you get a terrible outcome for a decision, unexpectedly, where the other option also felt dark and depressing, but the moments of hope and happiness almost shine brighter as a result. The game makes you feel important, influential, and powerful, while also reminding you that sometimes things are just outside your control. Yeah, you can redefine who controls or governs a certain province, but sometimes when you execute everyone in a village to save a man that they wrongfully accused or seem to wrongfully be persecuting, there are consequences. It's about the journey, not the destination. For countless hours, you can explore the unique systems, manage your party, and build out something that feels incredibly satisfying, but there isn't really a climax. Eventually, you'll have seen everything, all that there is to see, and dear Lord, I hope they have DLC and more areas in the future, because that is an instant purchase on my part. I'll go right to the Steam store and buy it as soon as they launch it, but when the time comes when you think you know everything, even if it took 100 hours to get there or 200 hours to get there, I'm over 200 hours right now, that's when the game stops shining as bright. I suppose I can't even really complain about that since I haven't even really gotten to that point yet myself. I'm still engaged and still interested and still kind of learning little details and things here and there. And I have a whole idea for a new playthrough with just 6 different party members who get trained to a level of demigod-style power with maximized equipment and everything, and then face the hardest content all by themselves. But I know that time is coming. I know that I've learned pretty much everything, experienced the world as it was meant to be seen, and played through the bulk of the content. With all of that said, I have no reservations whatsoever in recommending this game. It is fantastic. Shiro Games are deserving of the highest possible praise here, and I can say with certainty that if anything I described here is even remotely interesting to you, if the gameplay on screen even seems slightly interesting, the purchase is worth it. Some people will, of course, have their complaints. It breaks immersion, for example, when the caravan of party members and animals just runs headlong through buildings or walks off bridges into the river because they're trailing so far behind and the tracking works that way. It's a bit frustrating when you have to go farm for 30 minutes and get gold or food just to even go to a new region or province because the journey necessitates resources. But when I stopped fighting the game systems, trying to struggle against them, stopped trying to rush through them, I guess, and just embrace the game for what it is and what the developers intended it to be, it became one of my favorite games I've ever played. Not the top favorite, mind you, let's be honest, but pretty damn close. It's certainly, without a doubt, in my top 10 of all time. There's a link down below to the Steam page for the game if anyone wants to look at it, check it out, buy it, etc., but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. It feels good to talk about video games again, even if it's kind of more like side content on the channel now. It just, I don't know, that enjoyment, that level of enjoyment and just personal fun is fantastic, and I miss it a lot. Thank you all for watching. Of course, I'm rusty at this, and I hope to get better. There's another indie spotlight coming soon for a specific game that I've been tracking since the very early stages of development, where I was the first YouTuber in the world to actually get footage. But yeah, more of the complex investigation stuff and exposure type things and videos and the ARG we're developing soon, I hope. Also, I'm looking for a high quality company to help me with taxes, by the way. If anyone has recommendations, please put them in the comments down below. I need to get the fuck away from the current company that's handling that because they're garbage. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to me ramble. Links down below to support. This game is amazing. Everyone should give it a chance. Have a nice night.